Okay. Okay. Well, I'll say trusting everybody can see. My presentation is on a Menti. Please join the Menti. You can see that Menti code that you need to use to find Menti and join it.
There's also, isn't there? There's
And there on the Padlet,
Padlet, yeah, which
there
I'll
is
share.
also a QR code, which I always find is much easier to use. So
Share that.
if you look at the festival Padlet for this session, there is a Menti code there. So if anyone's got any problems, don't worry. Use the chat to say what I'm going to ask you in a minute. So we'll be using the chat as well. So yeah, so just to say hello to everybody globally, and pleased to be here talking about icebreakers. The title of the session today is Breaking the Ice Whilst Building Inclusion. And I work at the University of Exeter, as you can see behind me in my screen. And I work in the learning design team who work with the academics, subject matter experts on their content to deliver it both online. I particularly work on the online degrees that we create for postgraduate study. But as also part of my role, I work with academics on ways that they can use technology and learning design in their sessions. And I wanted to talk today about some work that I've done with some academics and some of the experiences I've had on inclusive icebreakers. So just to start with my own icebreaker, can you, in the chat here, can you just type the name of your favorite song? A lyric or the title of it or whatever would indicate. Nice. That's good. Yeah. One of my favorites, Dancing Queen. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, I love Hallelujah. Yes. Don't Stop Me Now. That's great. That one. Now, I don't know that, Georgie. Bad Habits. That's a great song. Imagine. Oh, and of course, Bohemian Rhapsody. Yeah. Oh, there's so many great ones here. That is just rolling in. Second Act. Don't know that one. Yeah. So anybody else? So we've typed them in. That's great. So hopefully now someone would like to volunteer to just sing a couple of lines from that song to us. Just use the hands up, which is in the reactions at the bottom of the screen. Anyone's got their hand up? Maybe Gail or Paolo, you can tell me if anyone's got their hand up. No hands up?
No hands up.
No. Did anybody leave?
I didn't notice anyone leave.
I hope nobody left because I want you to hold on to the emotions that you all felt. I could see Nikki's face at that point. And
luckily I
in the Menti, type in how you felt. I'm not really going to ask you to do that.
Luckily I was primed, else my face would have been very much the same.
Yeah, panicky. And can we all see my screen with the responses for the word cloud coming up? Good, engaged, great. Did anybody want to sing their song? Curious. Horror, yeah, not me, yeah. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Laughing, yeah. Yes, shy. Yeah, irritated, yes. Yeah, what a stupid thing. Absolutely. Yeah. So we'll come back to that emotion. So I'm just going to fooled with, yeah, it felt a bit sneaky, didn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Any others? Okay, so great range of responses there. And I'm just going to say, so in this session, we're going to return to that emotion. I want to talk about which I'm sure a lot of you are aware of. We've all used icebreakers probably in our teaching, for those of us who've been educators, as I have previously to this role. I was in education for 20 years. We're going to talk about the key principles, purpose and theories for inclusive icebreakers. And we're also going to then go into some breakout rooms where I hope we can have a really good, meaty discussion to keep us awake at this time of day. And then I've got some resources and an ongoing discussion that I hope might happen on a Padlet, which is all on the festival Padlet that is there for this session. So let's just return to those emotions. We're referring to an article called "What is Neurodiversity?" But I think we would say that neurodiversity can often be described as a biological fact, a range of different ways that people's brains, emotions interact and function. And personally, I wouldn't mind singing my favorite song because I'm in a choir and I love singing in front of people, but it's really, I'm a bit unusual in that way. But many people in the emotions said in the word cloud was a range of emotions, negative, a lot of negative here, looking at the most extreme, terrified, right up to just uninspired, or I was fooled. Someone said I was being fooled with. And that feeling can permeate the rest of the session. So your initial feelings towards me as an educator, if that really was something I did to you, you could regard me with suspicion for the rest of my sessions that I might be talking to you about. And we're aware that that group of people, there's 22 of us here, there are going to be people who've got lots of different backgrounds and life experiences, as well as a range of possible traits on the spectrum of neurodivergence. And so the idea is in our educating that we are including and creating an accessible culture so everybody feels that they are able to contribute in a positive way and that these positive emotions are encouraged. But the main thing is not to make assumptions about what people would feel. I'd never assume that everybody else would want to sing their favorite song in here. So University of Exeter, which is the university I'm talking from, we have, we're right in the depths of massive strategy aim for the 2030 outcome, where we've got our transformative education framework. And we are, in this statement here, using the power of education to transform our students' lives so they can transform the world. And it's very much aligned to the Universal Design for Learning guidelines. And there's a link for that in the slides that I'll share, where we talk about offering options. I didn't give anybody an option not to sing their song. Ways to present information in different ways. I could have asked you to put an image in for your favorite song and a choice of action and expression. So again, singing was not the only option perhaps for that. So we welcome and champion diversity to create a sense of belonging so that everyone's valued. So in that icebreaker, I'm not sure everybody felt they belonged there or was included. But the good practice for inclusivity is good practice for all students, not just those who had an ILP or a trait on neurodiversity spectrum. So just taking it back to the roots of what is the purpose of an icebreaker, a colleague of mine said a great quote here, where calls for collaboration and collaborative ways of working abound as a desirable student skill set. And the icebreaker is commonly used to develop a collaborative mindset. But let's just think what is collaboration and what is not. So I've used an image of rowers, but that's not. We're not all wanting to encourage students to all row at the same pace in the same direction as a team of rowing eights. And for anybody that watched it, very disappointing Oxford-Cambridge boat race a couple of weekends ago, where a team got beaten many, many times. So let's just look a bit more into collaboration then. It's not a one way, it's not everybody doing the same thing. It's an interaction between people. It's a mutually communicating shared verbal and non-verbal language. And what we're hoping is that people can influence each other. That's what we're really aiming for in our student population, that they express their thoughts, their disagreement, they challenge, they question. So what we hope from an icebreaker is that we create a space that allows the students to establish trust and develop safe learning environments to help them with that. And that we don't want them to just sit there and rote learn. We want them to have meaningful interaction and learning with us as the educator. So one of the ways that I've worked on and that I want to talk to you about as an example today is that we have a playful approach, and that we need to look for ways to challenge all the stakeholders in our group to put their part and discuss. And we don't want to perpetuate power structures where you've got the educator in the leading role and the students listen and say nothing. You'll have some students who approach a session who are very confident speakers. Their educational background has prepared them for debate and discussion. And there'll be other students where they've come from a background where debate and discussion is absolutely shut down, and they're shy, they're afraid to speak out. So playful approaches can move the students away from fearing giving the wrong answer. And again, different cultures, different education backgrounds will have inculcated in the students a very wide-ranging view about saying something and trying something out, the fear of failure. And a key factor that exacerbates division is exposure to filter bubbles in social media. And I'd really love people to read that Evans article, which talks about the current generation of students who've come up to us, who've been through lockdown, who have been through massive use of social media, which is reinforcing their own personal group views rather than exposing them to debate and discussion. And there's a massive fear of challenging each other and being seen to be an outlier, or the cancel culture that we've seen a great deal of in the news. So I'm going to give an example now of a session that I did with two academic leads from our university, Andy Shapp and Karen Scott. And they were doing some work in an incubator project, which is a small funded project that we undertake at Exeter, to encourage their politics students when they're discussing controversial political issues. And you can imagine that's a very high stakes, very contentious, very emotive subject. And they're working on student ambassadors to come in to facilitate these discussions. And they asked me to come along to do a session with the ambassadors based on this inclusive icebreaker session that we delivered at the Success for All conference. So to begin the session, I brought in Lego, and the students in the group who are going to go on and facilitate the other students were asked to draw or use Lego to make their ideal discussion room, and they all chose to use Lego. So you can see in the photo here on this board, there are little areas that they chose to use on the billboard. So over on that corner, that is the student who built their ideal discussion room. There's another one, this blue, like a sort of bridge with a little ball next to it, was another student. This very aligned set of people, one side of a table with a little red button, a bit like a quiz show. They built that. Someone else built this one in the corner. And then as the students were in their group, they were very quiet to start with, but as they began to pick the Lego out, discussion started. animation started, and they began to talk about what they were choosing. We then twisted the board and asked the student to then add something fun to the person next to them's build. And they talked about what they were doing, and the discussion built, and the very quiet students began to discuss what they were choosing and began to discuss the reasons for it. And then we twisted the board again, and we asked them to add something out of place and then destroy the build and then rebuild it. And you can imagine the amount of discussion that was provoked. And during the course of this, we built an environment where it was safe to challenge, it was safe to destroy, it was safe to disagree, and it became amusing to see something fun added, and then it became, in a safe space, low stakes, shocking to see somebody destroying something you'd built and then build it back again. But having done this activity, what we had built together was a shared language, a shared safe space, a shared space where somebody had something to talk about, which was impersonal. It was to do with the Lego. It wasn't to do with what they were, where they'd come from, what their background was, what they knew about the subject. And the students then went on to discuss how they felt. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the rest of the incubator goes when they work with their politics students. So you could do this online. What I'm advocating here is low stakes random objects, building a shared discussion, building something which is impersonal. So when you break the ice, normally you're expecting people to share something personal, and thank you all for sharing your personal favorite songs. But is there a tension for our student population in sharing their favorite songs? Everybody's been happy to share those, but did you think, will anybody judge if I share this song and not that song? Will it say anything about me? Will another group of students challenge my popularity of that particular song? Will they talk later about, oh, fancy sharing that? It's personal. And that tension between sharing the personal and wanting to break the ice is a very real one. And particularly, as I've referred to earlier, those students who have been in social media bubbles and haven't had the opportunity to experience differing views in a safe place where it's okay to say, oh, I hate that song. Oh, I like it. This online one allows you to use, if you weren't in person with students, you couldn't use Lego, you could get them to choose one of the objects from this random object one. I picked this, but you could have a related one to your module topic. Why have you picked the owl? What do you like about the owl? Just talk about the owl. And someone else picks something else. Again, it's a low stakes, impersonal. But once you've discussed it, you've begun to have a shared language and a safe space to build then on what we really talk about wanting, which is collaboration. Okay, so we're now at breakout room point, and we've got 29 people. So, Paolo, you were thinking of about 5 or so per group?
Yes, that sounds great. Shall I give
Yeah, I'm just going
breakout
to
room?
I'm going to show the Padlet before we go into
Yeah.
it. And can we see that? Let me just stop sharing that one,
Yes.
and I'll start sharing the next one. Okay. So I'll come back to the link for the Padlet in a moment. So on the Padlet, these are not good icebreakers, but they may be familiar tropes that we've used. That, you know, they're typical ones that I've experienced these personally in some sessions. But what I'm asking you to do when you go into the breakout rooms is take a look at one of them. Now, I don't know if Paolo is going to name the breakout rooms 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, but maybe if you do you think you'll do that, Paolo?
I'm going to try. Do you want me to call
Yeah.
it circle call out, speed introductions, cocktail party, and so on?
Well, I'd just put 1, 2, 3, 4,
Okay.
5. Might be quicker.
But we're going to have 6, so we'll have 2 room.
Yeah.
1.
2 groups do scenario 1, for
1.
example.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you could call it 1 and 1A, maybe. So you've got the description of the icebreaker, and the instructions are here as well. But what I'd like you to look at is what could provoke negative feelings, such as you experienced when I said, okay, who's going to sing their song? How could you add multiple means of response to make it more universal design for learning aligned? Do they have to speak? You didn't have to sing. What about this would reinforce any inequalities of voice, existing power structures, or right or wrong response fears? And is there anything you could do to facilitate an online version? And any other thoughts you have on what might be wrong with this? So for each one, there's plenty to find wrong, and we'll have, say, 20 minutes, and I'll be really interested to see what people think. I'll just go back to sharing the Padlet screen now then. So this is the link for the Padlet. Hopefully people can find it. If you can't get into the Padlet, you could always type in the chat. If you don't want to go into a breakout room, don't, just, please return to this main room, and I'm happy to chat there. And you can get to the Padlet from the festival Padlet as well. So I'll just share the screen.
Have you put the Padlet in the chat, Sarah? Sorry, I'm
Yeah, there is the screen for that. Is that all right for everybody to get? I can also share the link to it.
Probably useful to have both, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Because I've got it on my phone now, but I might want it on my computer.
Yeah. Okay.
I can do that.
I'll just put the link in as well. So that's the.
Got it. Okay, I'm going to open the rooms now.
Oh, thank you.
Hang on. So where's it gone? Disappeared. Oh yeah, open all rooms. So hopefully you can now, a pop-up window has appeared and you can join one of the scenarios.
Hello.
Hello, we've just come back from our session.
Lovely. Right. Yes, I was waiting here. I wasn't sure if Paolo was going to close them or anybody else.
I wasn't 100% sure if it had 20 minutes. It felt about 20 minutes.
It feels about right. Yes, and hopefully a good length of time to do a discussion.
Yeah.
So I'll just I'll bring the.
You sent an announcement. I didn't actually manage to read it because we were deep in conversation.
Oh yeah, they don't last long, those announcements, do they? Yes. So is everybody back? And I know some people had to leave.
I don't think yet. Hang on.
Yeah. Or some people are also coming back now. Yeah.
Yeah, still people coming back, I think.
Okay.
I think so.
Well, I'll just share the Padlet now rather than the presentation.
That should be fine now, I think.
I'm not sure whether people wanted to type on there or if they're going to say what they thought about those sessions. And we'll just share that though. Is everyone back?
I think so.
Let's just check. I can still see a few people in them.
I think that's just because I think they are closed now.
Are they? Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we could reopen them and put people back.
Oh, okay. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so just going across, I hope that was a chance to have some good discussions, and that some of the things that I said before you went into the breakout rooms were thought-provoking. So is there anybody who was in a particular room who'd like to say anything about their discussion that went on? Anybody from scenario 1, the circle call out, where you all stand in a circle and wait for your turn? Paul.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, we had that scenario. First of all, ironically, it was a good icebreaker to get to know people by doing that. But in terms of the actual scenario we had for the circle call out, first of all, we weren't that familiar with that to begin with. So once we were aware of what it was, we had a look at the questions. So in terms of are there any elements which could provide negative feelings? The circle breakout involves students and an educator standing in a circle, and then the icebreaker is that each person introduces themselves with their name and an adjective. And the example given is "I'm happy Harry," and then they have to add an action. So "I'm happy Harry," and then they smile and wave. So that's generally what happens. The group then copy the action and say "Hello, happy Harry," and then it turns to the next person, and then it goes round. Basically, that's what it is. So our response to that was initially it's a bit of the spur of the moment thing, a bit of a time pressure thing for each one of the students. And what they might come up with is something that might be catchy and kind of perhaps fits the bill, answers the question, if you like, but isn't necessarily representative of themselves. The negative side of that is that it could become a label. So if, I don't know, if you're known as Happy Harry, then you'll always be known as Happy Harry. So
yeah, you just blurt it out and
yeah,
yeah.
you might be setting yourself up for a fall in that way. So in that way, it can be a little bit isolated because suddenly you're put on the spot. You've got to come up with something quite quickly, and something that normally would take a little bit of time to put in consideration. I would have thought maybe that's the idea, that you don't have enough time. I don't know, but we also were questioning, well, how does this really build trust? We weren't really sure about that. In terms of the second question, how could you add multiple means of response to make it more UDL aligned? Well, most people, I think, are familiar with introducing the person next to you. So that was our answer to that one, really, that you would go through that process, and then the person next to you would take the pressure off of you and introduce you, and so it goes on. So in that way, it's a little bit more universal, I believe.
Although you're still asking people to speak.
Yes, you've still got the same task.
You know,
yes.
What else could they do?
True, they could write it down, I guess.
Yeah. Could you give them a low stakes random object to choose to just hold that object up?
Yeah, or even add it to a Padlet, for example.
Yeah. And do you know, I've been in a group of colleagues, all educated colleagues, where someone had they just struggled to find, they weren't sure if the alliteration was the key. Were they supposed to find something that alliterated with their name, or was it supposed to be something else? And I watched them struggle and go through a massive amount of stress thinking about that as they were awaiting their turn, and the tension building and building. And I watched them do it. And so that, yes. Any other thoughts from that?
In terms of the third question, does it reinforce inequality of voice? Yes, we believe it does.
Yeah.
Quite clearly. So, and finally, how could you facilitate an online version? Well, we kind of hinted at that with the Padlet, but it could also be a slide, for example, as Kirsten suggested. So any other form other than verbally expressing yourself, it could be an image, for example. But would probably take a little bit more time, I imagine.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think that it's very personal. I mean, I know, as you say, you're off the cuff, you're picking just a random word, but does that random word become a label? Exactly. It's personal. So what I'm advocating is take all that personal out of that. Don't make it introducing yourself. Give them so low stakes random object to talk about, and they'll still get to know each other. Get a sticker when people come in to put your name on. You watch people. So that's what I'm advocating with that one. Definitely. It's a very tense icebreaker. I've been
Yes.
in them.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So anybody for scenario 2?
Just a quick note. I was just going to suggest we have just about 2 or 3 minutes. We've got 4 icebreakers left, so just.
Are we not over at 5?
We're over at 5, so I think if we do 2 minutes each.
True, that's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you, Padlet. Who was in 2? Does anybody want to speak on 2, or I'm happy to talk on it, or if they wanted to post in the chat?
I was in 2. There were 3 people, which was perfect size. And we talked about how a name itself, sharing a name, people might have concerns that their name is difficult to pronounce.
Yes.
Even the location can bring up concerns that people may have opinions about it. I talked about how at the beginning of I'm from Russia originally, and at the beginning of the Russian-Ukraine war, I actually genuinely felt uneasy naming that to other people in case they came at me with Russians are all X, Y, and Z, which I wouldn't want.
Yeah.
And time pressure can, so Viv wrote about how time pressure can cause anxiety because 30 seconds. And the judgment about what is interesting about ourselves is,
yes,
gosh.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's so personal. What do you tell? What do you don't? Yeah, absolutely.
And then on what might be a way of mitigating some of these issues, we talked about how rather than arranging one-on-ones, having small groups would take some of that pressure off, and maybe allowing a bit more time for slightly more of a conversation to evolve, because otherwise it's like hit, run, hit.
Yeah.
And Gail was saying how if you did that with 10 people, you probably would remember none of them.
No,
possibly.
Exactly. Be exhausted and dissatisfied. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And in terms of maybe some of the others can help me out on what our thoughts on facilitate an online version. We certainly talked about choosing an image, I think.
Yeah, and again, for anybody else who was in that group, maybe the image, it wasn't anything to do with you personally. Again, that's my message really, is take the personal out. So you don't introduce yourself at all. Introduce your object. Introduce your picture that you've taken from, on the Padlet today. We've seen a lot of pictures of people's walks. So yeah, absolutely. Anything else from scenario 3? Thank you. So, and again, inequality of voice, those who are very expert at introducing themselves in a very, very slick way, it puts everybody else when you think, oh dear, I didn't do it as well. And there can be that reinforcing power structures when you listen to somebody else introduce themselves and they've obviously practiced it. So scenario 3, does anybody want to speak on that's still around? Or again, I'm happy if you want to type in the chat or.
So I can talk about this one a little bit. So this was the cocktail party that you were invited to, and you'd have 10 minutes to kind of meet and introduce yourself to as many people as you can, shaking hands, that sort of situation, talking about what cocktail you've got and why it's your favourite, why you've chosen that one. I think the first thing that probably jumped out is the presence of alcohol, or certainly sort of using the term cocktail specifically kind of suggests that alcohol would be present, and for some people it wouldn't necessarily be appropriate. It might not be in their culture to drink alcohol, and also kind of the effects with alcohol around sort of heightened emotion, and whether that would create a little bit of fear in itself as well, that things might be misconstrued a lot after those side of things. In terms of thinking about it how we could change this. Perhaps it doesn't really need to be cocktails. Perhaps it can be any drink that you can be talking about. You know, it can actually just be a glass of ice cold lemonade that you might choose to
Yes.
drink.
Yeah,
Because that's your
absolutely.
favorite drink. Thinking about that to progressing that to online, we could have online with whatever drink you've sat with at home. So I've just had a mug of tea, and I chose that because I was thirsty and wanted something warm.
Yeah.
So that kind of idea that we don't need to be quite so specific with what we're suggesting people have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're very specific, a lot of these bad examples, and giving a bit more choice. I mean, it could have been food, you know, what have you just eaten? But again, it's still personal. Maybe you didn't eat that day, you know, maybe you're fasting for 12 hours and then you don't want to get into discussing that. So again, absolutely take away the personal. And again, it still reinforces the inequality of voice, doesn't it? Because there'll be people who are very slick at talking about their choices and which drinks they've chosen, and others that aren't. So again, you know, have a low stakes item that's already chosen, then you don't have that. What shall I decide to talk about? Conflict for the students. Yeah. Anything else from that scenario?
I don't think so.
Thank you, Fiona. And then we've got number 4. Oh, look, we've got a lot of we've got comments there. So I mean, did anyone want to speak on the comments, or shall I just, we're sharing the comments here. We could have a look at them. Yes, annoyed, too vague. Was anyone in that room here? This was the key concept. Having a little energizer in the middle of a session to see if the students have come up with a concept. So,
I mean, I was in that room, but I don't know if either of the others would like to chat.
I think you should go ahead, Paolo.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, so ours was very vague. It said, I can't remember exactly what it said now.
they had to sort of come up with a short version of the concept.
Yeah, but we didn't know what the concept was.
Yeah, let's say
and-
just any concept.
Yeah. So we
Had been introduced.
yeah,
They
So, yeah.
define a short headline about whatever concept you've been talking
Yeah.
about in the session.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we actually found the task slightly confusing because we didn't know what the concept was. So I see now that we were meant to probably have assumed it's an icebreaker, not at the very start, but after the session, and some
Yeah,
concepts have already been
yeah.
introduced. Okay. So yeah, we took also what you said about it. It was a little bit theoretical and academic, and that may have put pressure on them to talk about the concept, and it wasn't it wasn't trivial, I guess. So if we ever, I haven't actually got the Padlet up now, I don't know why, but yeah, see what I said. So at first there was slightly annoyance, didn't really quite understand what to do, and we thought if that was the icebreaker, that was
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
it was
Yes, and
unclear.
that could be exactly the feeling of what do you mean by come up with a short definition. So we're looking at, in fact, referring back to Amy's session this morning, have the students got the skills? Is this some kind of test? Are they going to fail?
Yeah.
And so it's high stakes. It
Yeah.
is high stakes. If you didn't actually understand the concept, are you
Yeah.
going to say so?
Yeah, exactly. So we felt it may increase silence because of vagueness and lack of clarity, but also, particularly if your students didn't know each other, you might not want to say that you didn't understand the task. As it turned out, we were happy to, so we all chatted was a good icebreaker for the three of us who had
Yeah,
a nice conversation.
good.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
we thought, yeah, quite theoretical and not personal. I mean, you said that we don't want to be too personal, but it also something that's easy to talk about. And
Mm.
if it was a concept that could be a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, I mean, it could be because it's not personal, but
Yeah.
at the same time, what is personal is, did you understand what's just been taught in this session at this break point to re-energize and say, okay, everybody, now let's come up with a headline. It's quite high stakes, isn't it? Yeah. So last scenario, which is the baby photo. Who was anybody around in that? I can see somebody's, yeah, could be people who are not comfortable with showing their old pictures, or they may not be able to. Anybody want to talk on that in the time we've got back here?
Hello.
Hello, thank you.
It's okay. So we were discussing several points in regard to the picture. So yeah, they were bringing in their own pictures, but still is an image of a child. There is concerns involved. There is not concern. It could be past trauma or childhood adverse experiences that might be triggering if they get asked for a picture. It might start other type of bullying or pick on. It depends on, yeah, it depends on what level, but it could happen at any level really. So I don't think, or we didn't think that it was appropriate to ask for a
Yeah.
picture of your childhood.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Yes, that some, and I don't know if anybody mentioned if people had a different gender to their childhood pictures. That's a whole nother one. So
Yeah.
not offering an option to do something else is immediately difficult in this scenario. Any other thoughts?
We thought that alternatives could be offered, really. Like you don't need, for the assignment, the assignment description, you don't really need a picture of a child. It could be a podcast, it could be an illustration if you really want something more visual. It could be an illustration. AI does do really realistic pictures nowadays. So there are alternatives. It shouldn't be that restrictive, and it shouldn't be that personal, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And so I think it's probably the most uncomfortable, apart from what I did to you all at the start of the session, it's one of the most uncomfortable icebreakers. And yet again, I've been in that, in scenarios where people all have a fun time, but it's usually after you know everybody. It's not when you completely haven't met anybody or broken the ice. So yeah, so I see the times come up. I've put some resources in. They're additional, really, for people to have a think about, that Gen AI can suggest other options. If you tell it, I've got a group of students, I want to make sure I'm aligned to UDL. So in the resources on the Padlet, you'll see a prompt sheet. I can hear an echo on my sound. Don't know why it's doing that. I've also got just a sort of thought sheet if you've got an icebreaker that you're thinking of using. And I've also put the slides. Hopefully you can access that Menti slide. That's got the references to all of the sessions. And the final column is, if you wanted to, if you have some fantastic icebreakers that you've used with the students, or if you go on, I mean, I'd love to hear if anybody goes away and changes something after they've been in this session, then please post on that Padlet. I would love to hear about that. So yeah, I've probably used all my time now, Paolo. So
Brilliant.
time for
Thank
people
you
to
very
go
much,
out.
Sarah, for definitely made me think about. I'll be thinking about this the next time I set up icebreaker activities, certainly. And
Great.
thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
Just to mention, there's a feedback form. Well, they're actually in the program. you'll find a feedback form for all the sessions you have attended today. So it'd be great to have your feedback. Look forward to seeing you at 9 AM tomorrow if you can make it, or 1 PM, or another session at 4 PM. And do get engaged in the mosh pit activities as well, which you can also find on the programme. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks.
Thank